Hello, English 10 sophomores. Let's start with prayer. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So today, I gave a lecture that relied heavily on images projected on the screen. Because of that, I didn't really think that it would be a particularly good lecture to try to just record for you. I did record it, but I just didn't like the way it turned out because it's just not. Sometimes you just have to be there in terms of seeing the images. So what I'm doing instead is I am going to lead you through the free write myself, and I then am going to present to you those images and some of the major material that we went through in class. Mainly because I just feel like you need to be able to see the images close up, and in order to really get the right feel for what we're doing. So the first thing we did in class was we spent the first few minutes explaining a Mr. Tui free write. So I'm going to copy and paste that into this WordPad, and then we will talk about what that is. So this first part is just how to write a Mr. Tui free write. So we're just going to go through this here. I don't know why this is all in italics, so we'll undo the italics there. So how to write a Mr. Tui free write. So the purpose of a free write is twofold. The first is just to see if you've done your reading. The second and more important purpose is to engage your critical thinking. I'm not just interested in your answer, but you're showing your thought process. So I want you to think of a free write kind of like a math problem where you have to show your work, right? So the main thing is, as you're moving along in high school towards college, especially when you're in college, you'll have to do a lot of timed writing. And so the main thing is you will have done a reading or you'll have a prompt, and they're basically like writing sprints, right? 10 minutes of writing isn't particularly long, but in order to answer a prompt and to put together your thoughts, it's really good to get the right practice. And to get that right practice, what you need to do is you just need to take 10 minutes to look at the prompt and to just sit down and write. So because you're at home on your computer, I guess you could type. Now, that's a huge advantage, by the way, because most students can type a heck of a lot faster than they can write with their hands. But the idea is to do as much as you can in that short period of time, and then also to be fully engaged and to just try to get as much as you can. The main purpose of this in these 10 minutes is to just see how well you can do in writing and writing under a time crunch. When I have students here in class, there are two main rules. Number one, that they really can't talk. I talk about this, if you talk in the middle of the free write, I basically just kick you out and then I give you 0 for the day. That doesn't affect you. But the main thing is free writes ask difficult questions in order to just push you to think under pressure, think on your feet. And it's just good training for the future because you're going to have to do this. The right answer is not the goal of the instruction. The goal is to follow the method, right? Which means by the road. So if you want to get 5s in a free write, I just say always write, connect the dots, show Mr. Tui how you came to your conclusions. If you don't know or not sure, write out the questions you have and why you're not sure. Through this process, there should be an R there. Through this process, you might find out you have an answer after all. Give a full effort in good faith, and you don't sell yourself short, or don't sell me short. So what I'd like you to do, I'm going to show you the material for the free write. What I would like you to do is I will post the prompt for the free write, and then what I would like you to do, and again, this is this is basically all on the honor system, guys. But what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to then, timing yourself for 10 minutes, to write as much as you can and to answer these prompts to the best of your ability. Once the timer gets to 10 minutes, feel free to then to stop. And once you hit 10 minutes, just put a dash. It doesn't have to be, even if, because the importance of stopping when the time hits is important. And it will give me an opportunity to see where you are and to see what you do with 10 minutes. That is an important idea. So I'm going to invite you to pause the video now or pause the video after we read this writing prompt, and then to just write for 10 minutes and see what you come up with. Here is the writing prompt that was based upon your reading for today. Why do you think George Orwell decided to name his representation of Stalin Napoleon? Who was Napoleon to the Russian people, and why does this clarify Orwell's intent? Explain what you think the significance of this might be. If you need further things to write about, why use pigs as the representation of the intelligent and the elite? Right, so why does he, with the squealer and Squealer and Snowball and Napoleon. Why pigs? Why do you think he uses pigs? If you're having trouble coming up with keeping writing about Stalin, Napoleon, and Orwell. So go ahead and pause now, and then we'll pick up right afterwards. Okay, so most of the class was spent asking students, why do you think Orwell picks Napoleon? And obviously, because we're not going back and forth and whatnot, and also we're going to be using a lot of images. It's not, I can't so much, I can't be grilling you all for why do you think he's Napoleon. So that's not doable. But what I can do is I can give you a little history lesson and why this is important. I have sent links of two images, one under like I say painting for one image, and then I say graph for another image. So having read about Napoleon's invasion of Russia, the first one, feel free to look at the painting as we're listening to this video. When you look at the painting, you see Napoleon is in the center of the frame. It's where your eyes are drawn in the frame. You do see a lot of freezing, starving, other poor sods of Russian soldiers. You even see some frozen in the snow. But they're not the focus of the painting. The focus of the painting is Napoleon. And this very much goes with the traditional view of history kind of called the great men theory of history. The great men are what build the narratives of history. And this is partly true. The thing you should know about Napoleon is he came to power in France in the fallout of the French Revolution. There was a lot of chaos, and so a strong, genius military leader often can seize power and become a dictator in circumstances like that. And we've seen it many, many times in many continents. Now, the point of this is Napoleon, because of his genius, he was not a man who rose because he was born to wealth or born to nobility. He was simply a person of outstanding ability, tremendous work ethic, and the ability to lead other human beings. And so he conquered the vast majority of mainland Europe. I mean, mainland Europe basically belonged to Napoleon outside the Iberian Peninsula. Had Napoleon successfully invaded Russia, he would have secured his eastern border, and he might have, established a French empire. Who knows how long it could have survived? But Napoleon was defeated by the Russians. This was his primary defeat. This was the defeat that he really never recovers from. And the reason why this is particularly important is Napoleon did not so much underestimate the Russian armies whom he defeated, as much as he underestimated the Russian peasants. You see, Napoleon thought that he could win all these battles on the way to Moscow, get there before the dead of winter, and then hunker down in Moscow, get shelter in the city, get food, and quarter all his troops, etc. I would like you to look at the second image, which is the image of the graph. The image of the graph is by Menard, and it's probably the most famous graph in history. It is a graph of Napoleon's campaign in Russia. It is an image that I find both beautiful and terrifying. If you look at the bar, you see how the bar goes this way and then it goes back. There's a colored and then it goes into the black and white or the gray. The thickness of the bar, you see it gets very thick in the color at the far left part of the graph, and then it moves up and then it gets thinner as it goes. The thickness or thinness of the various bars on the graph represents the number of troops Napoleon had alive with him in his army at a given time in his path to Moscow and back. You'll note that Napoleon begins his campaign with 450,000 men and returns with approximately 10,000. What Napoleon didn't count on is he did not count on the fact that the Russian peasants thought of Napoleon as the Antichrist. Their clerics, the Russian Orthodox Church called Napoleon the Antichrist. They were not the only ones. There were many Catholics who were afraid that Napoleon was the Antichrist as well. And so for them, this was the emperor of darkness. I mean, his armies were like the invincible armies of darkness. And so they decided that instead of living under a tyrant and being slaves, they were going to die, even if they could take Napoleon with them. So when Napoleon gets to Moscow, expecting that he will be able to get shelter and food The vast majority of the people took what food they could and fled, leaving basically no food in the city, and then burning much of what could have been used by food by the French, and also burning a lot of what they would have used for shelter. Basically, they arrived to Russia in the dead of winter with not inadequate shelter and no food. They basically had a massive army now in the middle of winter without supply lines. And that was fatal. And so, the thing about that Russian spirit with Napoleon is they'd just rather die. They would just rather die than live under the rule of Napoleon. And this is why Orwell calls Stalin Napoleon. It's basically the worst thing. It's like it's worse than calling him the devil, right? And the fact that so many were willing to starve and freeze just so that they could take the French with them. This is really important. And so, in the sense, Orwell calling Stalin Napoleon is like calling him the incarnation of evil, the head of the armies of darkness. And it's giving him the whole book really is Orwell giving Napoleon, or excuse me, giving Stalin a giant middle finger. Now, when I say that, I mean I know that sounds rude, but guys, Stalin is responsible for the deaths of something like 30 million human beings. And when someone is responsible for the death of 30 million human beings, I mean, I'm not sure the middle finger is really inappropriate or hyperbole or an overreaction, right? And so this is important, right? And I invite you, if you wish, to look up on YouTube a piece by Aaron Copland called Hoedown from Rodeo. And Aaron Copland's orchestral piece, which is beautiful, is taken from a Russian piece of music called Bonaparte's Retreat. And what the spirit of Aaron Copland still has in its use of Bonaparte's Retreat is it's the spirit of the Russians rising up and destroying the French army that had come to conquer and enslave them. It still has this explosive energy and power, which is the explosive energy and power of the expression of war and the expression of basically pursuing the armies of darkness in retreat. And that's what that piece is really about. It's an extremely powerful piece of music. And the reason why I share this with them is I want them to understand that the fact that the Russians hate Napoleon all the way down to their bones, right? Like, there was a line that the Russians said once in World War II, and it was not one step back. And this spirit is really brought to life. And so when Orwell is writing this, it's one of those, the pen is mightier than the sword kind of thing. I mean, his pen in writing this critique of Stalin is the sword, it's the pen being mightier than the sword. And he is trying to stick that pen sword in Stalin's throat. And so, and knowing that he could die for this, right? I mean, the NKVD got to Gareth Jones, right? That's the Soviet Secret Service at the time. It became the KGB later. They got to Gareth Jones, who reported on the Holodomor. They could have gotten to Orwell. He was afraid of this, and he should have been. So, this is what this is about, and this is why Orwell calls Stalin Napoleon. So, anyway, for those who are in honors, if you're not in honors, you can stop the video now. But not yet. But you get what I'm saying. I'm about to talk about something for honors class. If you are in standard, please remember that you still have to read. This is true for honors as well. I want you to reread chapter 1 of Animal Farm, because we're going to look at Old Major's speech and we're going to relate it to some certain allegorical ideas, and we're going to discuss some of those allegorical ideas through the class. And there will be a reading quiz, which you will be able to find on Monday over chapter 1 of Animal Farm. So that's it for the standard students. Jesus loves you, and so do I. For those who are in honors, right? What you're going to do, what you owe me, but not for Monday, but just to remind you, is that you're going to have this thing called the reading journal in honors class. And so you're going to create a Google Doc. So I want you to create a Google Doc, and you're going to share it with me. You're going to share it with, m2e at, hs-stm.org. And what I want you to entitle it, TUI Journal, and then space, and then whatever your last name is, right? And that's how I'll be able to find them, right? And the original prompt is, as you saw in the link, I gave you a passage from Churchill's The Gathering Storm. And in that passage from Churchill's Gathering Storm, it talked about a person by the name of Molotov, who was the Soviet foreign minister. And so the prompt for your first journal entry is going to be, who is Molotov? And what I mean by who is Molotov, meaning who is Molotov in Animal Farm? There is a character in Animal Farm who is a direct representation of this character, of this person, Molotov. And I want you to figure out why. This is kind of a test. What I want you to see and what I want you to do, and so you have to do this in 500 words. I don't do page counts, I do word counts. In 500 words, what you need to do is you need to discuss why you think a particular character in Animal Farm is the representation of Molotov. And I want you to use quotes and evidence from the text. That's what I really want. I want to see you using quotes and evidence from Animal Farm in why what you think sounds right from Churchill's description of Molotov, who is the character in Animal Farm that this represents. What I really want to do, especially with this first journal, is I'm testing as a whole the student's ability to use evidence well, to use citation correctly, and to just general use of MLA. I want to see where everybody is. So what I want you to do is I want you to cite and use evidence the way you were taught to do so in previous English classes, so we can see how much you remember and retain. 500 words, I want you to speculate. Who do you think in Animal Farm, what character in Animal Farm represents this nefarious individual, the Soviet foreign minister, Molotov? Right, and so that's what you have to do for honors. That is due on Wednesday. We're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive on that on Monday, but you can look forward to that for Monday. But also for Monday, remember, you do have a reading quiz over Chapter 1 of Animal Farm. By the way, someone asked me today, Mr. Tui, is George Orwell the author's real name? It is not. George Orwell is a pseudonym. And so we'll talk about pseudonyms and what a pseudonym means, because it's going to be a great vocab thing. The actual name of George Orwell is Eric Arthur Blair, if you didn't know. So that's kind of a cool bit of information. Anyway, I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. Look out for the email that will have the lesson plans and the homework for all of next week. I will both send it to you in an email, and it will also be put on the Schoology, which I'm still kind of figuring out and playing with. And and then I'm hoping to grade the stuff from this week and get those grades on Power School this weekend. A lot of work to do, big mountain of stuff, but it'll be great. And I just hope that everyone has a wonderful, safe weekend. Stay safe, be smart, wash your hands, wear masks, etc. And just remember that we love you here at the High School of St. Thomas More, and we can't wait to see you back in person.